about a third of the way down. Normally, I buy Rav Yosef. Bias is Rav Yosef. Hadra of Yehudah de Shmuley. Okay, so what was Rav Yehudah's statement? Good or good? That was the debate between Rav Yehudah and Rav Nachman. If you say good or good, it basically means you can. It's something analogous to the modern day contemporary shotgun clause, where you say to him basically, "Here's the deal: either you give me this deal, or I'm buying you out." Mm-hmm. And now it's not quite a shotgun clause, because the whole purpose of a shotgun clause is typically where one partner has the means, they can buy out the other one. It's typically, a shotgun clause is typically done when you know the other guy can't do it. That's why you're doing it. Over here, it would only be useful where the other guy could do it. It has to be that both of them can afford to buy out each other. So they could say, look, it's one of us. Here's the deal I'll make you. And if you make me the same offer, you have my portion. So Rabbi says this statement again, Rav Yehudah holds of the concept of good ayagud, and Rav Nachman disputes the fact that such a thing exists. Rav Nachman says you cannot force a dissolution of the partnership, even in a scenario where each one can afford to buy the other one out. So Hadra of Yehudah, Rav Yehudah, that's a supporter of the concept of good ayagud. The Shmuel, it's the same opinion of Shmuel. It's not we learned. The Kisvei HaKodesh. Let's say a guy has a scroll that has in it the canon of Jewish writings. It's not just a Sefer Torah. This is a Sefer Torah plus more writings in back of it. So we'll talk about it in more detail. But let's say there are other books attached to it. They want to divide it up. They don't split it because it's a disgrace to take a scroll of religious writings and start cutting it up. And Shmuel says, this is only true if each scroll, in other words, if you have all 24 books of the canon written on one scroll. Right? Today the custom is you only put 5 books. You put the 5 books of Torah, and the remainder of the canon gets written each book on its own. The exception of the 12 books of Trios that are written as a unit. So Shmuel says, look, if you have a Sefer Torah and you also have, the guy also wrote five books of Tanakh, long ones, let's say. So he wrote Yirmiyah, Yechezkel, Yeshaya, and Shreyaser. So then they're allowed to split against each other. It's only that we don't cut up the books. If the concept of good or ugly does not exist, what difference is it whether the books are in one volume or in multiple volumes? We should keep the library intact. In other words, one guy presumably doesn't want to split it. So then why are we splitting it? So the Gemara says, no. Tergum of Salman, b'shishneim reitzim. No. The idea of Kisvei HaKodesh is that even if they both want to split up this massive 24 canon book, 24 books of the canon, we don't allow them to. We don't allow them to cut up the scroll. So the idea is when there's multiple scrolls, then if they want, then they're allowed to split it. So it's not that the split is being done against their will. They're willing participants. So it's irrelevant to the question of good or agud, of whether or not you can force a split force a dissolution of the partnership against the partner's will. Omar Meimer says, so the halacha is istina the good or agud. There is a law called good or agud. Omar Rav Ashi la Meimer. Rav Ashi says to Meimer, Hadr of Nachman mai. So Rav Ashi says to Meimer, what about Rav Nachman? Now let's not forget here. It's a very interesting. You have Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was a judge. He is the leader of a court. Generally speaking, the halacha is going to follow Rav Nachman in matters of judgments, because that was his experience. So he says to him, Amar Lai Shmiele. He says, I never heard of Rav Nachman. I think Gemara explains, Kalaimer, what he really meant to say was, Lai Svirli, I disagree with him. Okay. So the Gemara says, Rav. One second. V'harovin, they changed the textual variation here. V'harovin barchinina v'ravdimi barchinina shavik l'huavu tarate amasa. Rovin and Ravdimi had their father left them 2 maidservants. It was an interesting thing. They were both skilled at different skill sets. Chada, one of them, Yoda Afiya B'Shulei. She knew how to bake and cook. The Chada Yoda Pilcha V'Navo, and the other one knew how to sew and knit and weave. sorry, he should know how to spin and weave. He should know spin fibers and weave clothes. But also come to Rava. So they went in front of Rava. They're trying to figure out what they should do. But Amr Lahu, and Rava said to them, let's need the good yaguts. You cannot force a dissolution because they have different skill sets. What you have to do is you have to alternate the time. Each one works for you for one day. Okay. So clearly Rava disagrees with the concept of good yaguts. So the Gemara said, meaning he disagrees with Rabbi Yehudah. He goes with Rav Nachman's opinion that we cannot force a dissolution by forcing one partner to buy out the other. So the Gemara says, no, Shani Hasam, the Lamar mi boile travail, the Lamar mi boile travail. One second. Okay. Let's see how they explain this. Second. So the Gemara's resolution is that this is a little bit different because each brother wanted both maidservants. And what they were offering each other was that each one could buy one maidservant. They would split the maidservants. That's not good ayagud. Good ayagud is where one partner acquires the complete partnership. Not that we dissolve the partnership along specific lines. This is very important, very, very important for the conceptually. Good ayagud is there where one person now owns all the stuff that was formerly in a partnership. It is not, I'll take the work truck, you take the work van. That's not good ayagud. And therefore, this was not a scenario of good ayagud because neither one of them was offering to buy out both. They were all each of them wanted to choose one of the maidservants. So a lot of good ayagud. Simar says, Simar says, what do you mean? But we do have good ayagud by Torah scrolls, where one guy has the books of Torah, the other guy has the books of prophets, right? And Shmuel says, as long as they're written in two separate scrolls, then you can split them. But that's not good ayagud either, right? Good ayagud would be, I take all the scrolls and I give you the money. So it's not good ayagud. So Gemara says, you're right. Shmuel wasn't talking about good ayagud. We already explained. Shmuel was talking about where they willingly agree to split it this way. Right? This is where they agree. Meaning where they don't agree. The idea is when it's written in one scroll, even if they agree, we don't cut up a scroll. But where they agree, and there's two scrolls, then if each one wants to take a different set of scrolls, that's acceptable. It has nothing to do with the question of good ayagud. Okay, now we're finished with good ayagud, and now we discuss a bunch of halachas, a bunch of laws pertaining to a Torah scroll. One second. Yeah.
So what you're saying is there's no such thing?
It seems that the final conclusion of the Gemara is that the law of good ayagud is in effect.
Isn't.
Meaning, if one partner offers to purchase the other partner's share, he can say good ayagud. Basically, either make my offer to me, or take my offer and give up your portion of the partnership.
In this case, they split the.
So this case, the case of the scrolls is not a case of good ayagud.
Okay.
It's a case where they both agree to split scrolls. If they did not agree to split scrolls, good ayagud would be, I take everything and here's the check, or take my portion for the same check. Okay, so now we get to laws of writing a scroll. Tana Rabbanon, Madbik Adam Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim Ke'echad, Divra Meir. Meir says one can write one massive scroll that contains in it the full 24 books of the canon. Rabbi Yehudah says, Torah b'fnei atzma, you should write the books of Torah on their own as one scroll. Nevi'im, prophets b'fnei atzma on their own scroll. Uksuvim, scriptures b'fnei atzma on their own scroll. The rabbis say, Kol echad v'echad b'fnei atzmai. So Torah is written as one, but then all these individual scrolls of each of the remaining 19 books of the canon are written on their own. Rabbi Yehudah says, Ma'aseh b'Baisis ben Zainan. There was a story of a woman whose name is Baisis ben Zainan. Shmoina Nevi'im medubakim ke'echad. He had 8 books of prophets written as one long scroll. Al pi Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Following the ruling of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The rabbis say, he had one scroll at a time. There was only one scroll per book. Rabbi says, Rabbi Yehudah says, they brought us a large, complete canon written as a single scroll, and we ruled that it was kosher. Okay, obviously today this is not what we do. Today we write the books of Torah as one unit, and the rest of the books are written each on their own, which is the opinion of the rabbis. Okay, bein chumash l'chumash al Torah, when a person writes between the books of the Torah, so there are 5 books in the Torah, right? Between each of the books, our Shitin is 4 lines. Yes.
Now, contemporaneously, all Nevi'im are separate scrolls, or they can be all in one.
So we'll soon see how to categorize Nevi'im, but generally speaking, the categorization is 8 books of Nevi'im. Even the last book is a volume that has in it 12 small prophets. We'll talk about that later. But each one of them is written on their own. Okay. So you write it's in between each of the books of Chumash, you leave 4 blank lines. If you ever get an aliyah at the beginning of a scroll, at the beginning of a Chumash, at the end of the Chumash, you'll see it very distinctly. V'chein bein kol novi l'novi. Similarly, if you're writing a large book of Navi, so you're writing all 8 in one scroll, between each book of Navi, you leave 4 lines blank. In the Navi of 12, this is what we call a trios, so the 12 short books of prophets. Gimel Shitin, you only leave 3 blank lines. Okay. U'misayim milmata, u'maskal milmala. In this version of the Brisa, we understand that you have another possibility, which is that you can end toward the end of the line, end the book of Navi at the end of the column, and begin the new book at the beginning of the next column. That's sufficient. You don't have to leave the 4 lines. Okay. And not only that, we'll see in the next Brisa that's actually recommended. If you're writing one book of one massive scroll of 8 books of prophets, ideally you finish the book at the end of the column, and you start the next book at the beginning of the next column. The reason for this is if you ever want to cut up the scroll, which you can easily cut it without having, Tetris-shaped pieces, right? Somebody wants to have a large canon as one scroll. Medabek, he's allowed to do so. Okay, in the beginning, if everyone gets this is most noticeable in the Ashkenazi version of the Megillah. But it's also true of every scroll. You leave a certain blank portion at the beginning of the scroll. So if you get an aliyah at the first aliyah or the last aliyah, you'll see there's a blank page. Megillah, it's most noticeable. In Megillah, you open up, the first column is blank, and it's deliberate. The beginning, so according to this Brisa, the first column is a little bit of a blank column, meaning equivalent to all the other columns. But at the end, kidei logol hekef. So if you're writing the 24 books of the canon, you leave kidei logol hekef. What does that mean? You take the circumference of the book, of the scroll, and that's how much blank you leave. Now, this is, by the way, very easy to do because a scroll is typically written in pieces, right? And the pieces are stitched together. So when you get to your last scroll, you'll stitch together another blank piece that is enough. So it's as if the cover is built in. When you get to the end, you have a built-in cover. It's all blank. It's all blank parchment. You you end every book of the prophets at the bottom of the page, and you begin the next book at the top of the page. Then and if you want to cut it, you can cut it. My kamer. What does it mean if you want to cut it, you can cut it? The reason why you end the book at the bottom and start at the top of the page is so that you can cut it. I'm sorry. Okay, I sort of told you the conclusion. At this point of the Gemara, it just means that if you want, you're allowed to cut it. So the Gemara says, the end of the book, you have the beginning and the end of the book, you have to leave a blank portion so that you can roll it. So the Gemara says, what exactly are you rolling? If you're talking about rolling one column's worth, kasha hekef, meaning why are you leaving this large blank segment at the end of the book? So our Brisa says the beginning you leave a column, at the end you leave the hekef, the circumference, blank. You leave a piece of parchment, the equivalent of the circumference, blank. Well, this Brisa seems to imply that they're both exactly the same measurements. So if the measurement is an omud column, then why is it? Then what about the circumference? If you leave the circumference an equivalent to circumference blank, kasha omud. So then why are you leaving just a column blank? You should leave. They should both be the same amount. You leave some amount blank. It's a different quantity in each side. In the beginning of the scroll, it's just a column. At the end of the scroll, it's the equivalent of the circumference of the scroll. Rashi says, this price refers to a Torah scroll. Tanya, like we learned, Kol HaSfarim, all Svarim, these are scrolls. Niglola mitchilos and l'saifa. They're okay. So this is if anyone's seen the there's a number. I don't want to really get too sidetracked here, but I'm using this not as just as an example. It's an illustration, not necessarily the strictest analogy. If you've seen a Sephardic Megillah, you'll notice that it has one pole, and the entire Megillah is rolled against the pole. All books of Tanakh, according to this brisa, should be written on one pole, except the Torah scroll is written on two poles. So it's nigla la'emtzi'isa. It's rolled to the middle, whereas other scrolls are either put completely on one side or completely on the other side. Therefore, because the scroll is always written to the middle, therefore it's blank on either side. It's just one column's worth at the beginning, one column worth at the end. But because the book of prophets are written as one, they're rolled up against a single pole. So therefore, the end of it has to wrap around. So that's the difference between the books of Tanakh and the books of prophets and scriptures compared to the books of Torah. Okay. Obviously, it seems that Ashkenazim do not have this custom. It seems, I believe, Ashkenazim, even the books of prophets are written on two poles. Okay. The Sefer Torah nigla l'emtzi'isa, and the scroll is rolled to the middle. And you leave a blank column on either end. Okay. Amar Belozer Tzaddik. Kacha yikaisvei sfarim shushalayim oisen sifraim. This is how the scribes in Jerusalem would write their scrolls. They would, on the Torah scroll, they would leave a blank column on either end, the front and the end. And on the books of prophets, the front would have a column, and the back of it would have a full circumference that was blank. Tanar Rabban, the rabbis taught. Again, we talk a lot about scrolls now. Okay, is this is an interesting one. Okay, the length of the column. So Sefer Torah is comprised of multiple columns. The length of the column should equal the circumference of the scroll. Okay, we'll soon see how easy it is to do that. Okay, one thing I should point out here is you can see this in Kesser as well. Modern scrolls that are written in the past 70 years or so are relatively speaking thin. The parchment is very thin and light. It has to do with mainly with the technology of planing. We can plane things very, very thin. So you take a hide and you're able to plane it on modern planers that can really be very, very precise. Older versions of cloth, if you look at Kesser's old scroll, it's way thicker. The cloth is probably at least double, triple as thick. And that's how it was in Talmudical times. There are some other modifications that scrolls that are about 80 years old to a couple hundred years old are what they call painted on one side. Without getting into too much detail, Talmudical scrolls may have been even thicker.
You say tainted or
Painted.
painted? I thought you said painted, but I wanted to double check.
I believe Kesser scroll is painted as well. I'm not saying it's painted. There's some sort of coating or
Is
something
it
that they
like
leave.
lacquer almost like a coating?
Not sure exactly what it is.
So that's what you mean is like there's something.
There's some coating. It's a coating.
Okay.
It's a coating. No, on the back side of it.
Oh, on the back.
On
the back side.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
I believe Kesser scroll is coated with something on the back side. I'm not sure where exactly that started. I don't think it started in Talmudical times. Okay, fine. So you have this ratio. By the way, I think our scrolls are actually pretty good at getting close to this ratio. Okay, and you shouldn't make the circumference longer than the length of the written word, the length of the column. Shalos Rebbe Shir Sefer Torah B'Kama. They asked Rebbe like what is the ideal number? Amar Lahen B'Gvil Shisha, be 18 inches if the Torah was written on Gvil. B'Klaf B'Kama Ein Yedea. Okay, Gvil is a much, again, very hard to describe this without a visual representation here. I'll believe either. Oh no, I'm not going to find it. I packed my farm. I had a book that has a very good diagram for this. But there's basically two components to the cloth. There's cloth that has gvil on it and cloth that doesn't. What we do today is we plane off. You have the hide is very thick. We write on the inside of the hide. The exterior, the back side of the cloth is not really the exterior of the animal. That's mostly planed off. Sanded planes, it's cleaned off. But if you have in the Talmudical scroll, in the scroll of Talmud, some scrolls had a very large volume of the back side of the animal hide. That's sort of the difference between gvil and klaf. So gvil is the very thick version, and klaf is the thinner version. So gvil, it would be shisha, it would be 6 tefachim. That's approximately the length of the circumference. The klaf b'kama ein yedea. If you had klaf, meaning you thinned it out, what would it be like? Ein yedea, Rabbi Yehudah knows he wasn't sure. Rav Huna Kotzav Shivin Sifri. Rav Huna wrote 70 scrolls. This presumably does not mean he wrote it by hand. He hired people to write them. And of his 70 scrolls, only one scroll managed this ratio. Okay. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Kotzav Chad Amashke De'egli. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov wrote one scroll on the skin of a young calf. Now this is, I don't know if you should know this, but I'll tell it to you anyway. It's worthwhile to know. The modern day cloth comes exclusively from one type of animal. It's from fetuses of animals that were never born. Oh. So apparently there's enough of a global supply of slaughtered animals that have fetuses in them. Huh. And the cloth that we have is from those fetuses. And the reason for that is because it's the softest, it's the easiest to write on. Obviously, without access to a global supply chain, you would never be able to procure enough of.
It's hard to imagine how to process the fetus.
No, so the fetus is skinned. You're talking about these are relatively mature fetuses because you have to have a cloth that's large enough to use.
Right.
Sorry?
I said they must.
They must.
Yeah. And it's only today that we slaughter so much meat that we're able to have a steady supply of such fetus hides. This
would be like near the size of like a stillborn.
Roughly, correct. Yeah. Relatively mature fetus. Yeah. And it's easiest to write on. And we're able to procure enough, because you can imagine nobody's slaughtering extra animals to accommodate our needs to have cloth. However, writing the younger the animal, the easier it is to write on the hides. So he had the hides of young calves, which obviously have premium meat. Their hides are very easy to write on. So the hides are premium product as well. So it's you're talking here about a very prestigious scroll. It's like extremely expensive. He didn't have the fetuses, but at least he had young calves. So the Isramile and it matched. And people were so jealous of him, the jealousy that he was able to write like the perfect scroll. This is like the scroll of the century, right? It's like, everything, like the stars aligned. The jealousy was so intense that it caused him to pass away. The evil eye. The rabbi said to Rav Hamnuna, "Kosav Rav Ami Dalan Mea Sifrei Torah." They said Rav Ami wrote 400 scrolls. Amar Lahu, it's impossible. Can't write 400 scrolls, not possible. Dilma Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Kotzev. Maybe he wrote the verse Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. That verse he wrote 400 times, and that's what you're saying is 400 scrolls. Similarly, Amar Rav Zera, not Rav Yanai Arba Mea Karmi. Rav Yanai planted 400 vineyards. Amar Lahu, it's impossible. Dilma Shtayim Ken Geshtayim Va'achas Yetzisanav. There's a halachic vineyard. What's the halachic definition of a vineyard? It's two like this, two matching underneath, and one that's a tail. That means, so you have a box of 4, and then take another vine and put it equidistant at any of the between any of the 2 vines sticking out as a tail. Okay. So maybe he planted 400 halachic vineyards, but not 400 full-size vineyards. Okay. Now, getting back to the circumference issue. Now we have a very long technical question. I'll basically summarize the question very briefly, and then we'll see the technical side of it. But basically, we have the Ark of the Covenant, the Aron Habris, right, that was put in the temple. The size of the Aron was 2.5 amas long. Let's put that in tefachim. According to the first opinion, that it's 15 tefachim. According to the second opinion, it's 12.5 tefachim. Okay, and then it's either 9 or 7.5 tefachim wide. Again, so it's either 9 by 15 or 7.5 by 12.5. Inside this box were the 2 luchos, the 2 tablets. One was the second tablets, and the first tablets were the ones that Moshe Rabbeinu broke. And also in the same Aron was the Torah scroll. Now, how do we fit it in? If we're saying that the Torah scroll had to have a circumference of 6, the easy way to calculate the diameter, the diameter would to use the halachic version of it, which is 3 instead of pi. So then the diameter would be 2. Would we be able to fit a scroll that's 2 tefachim wide into the ark? So let's try to figure out exactly what was going on in the ark. I don't know if arts will have pictures or not. Okay. No, this is the vineyard picture. Oh, they have pictures. Yeah, okay. So the art scroll, if you have the art scroll, they'll have pictures for you. It'll be easier to follow along if you look at the pictures. This question, basically, we're going to go through a long brisa here. We should have enough time for it. And the question ends on the top of the next page. Okay, Mesve, question. Again, so the question is going to be that this circumference basically makes it impossible for the Torah scroll to fit in the ark. And we'll have to resolve it as we get along. Okay. Mesve, Orange Shot Moshe, the ark that Moshe Rabbeinu made, Amasayim V'chetzi ark, it was 2.5 amas long, V'ama V'chetzi rachbay, an amma and a half wide, V'ama V'chetzi kamasi, an amma and a half high. Okay, we're talking. The first opinion says, Ba'ama bas shishet tefachim. An amma was 6 tefachim. So let's turn that into amas. That means it was 9 by 9 by 15, right? 1.5 times 6 is 9, right? That was 1.5 up and down. So that's 9 by 9. Length was 2.5. 2.5 times 6 is 15. So 9, right? So let's just, we don't really have to calculate the height now. The important is the width of the length. We have 9 by 15. That's an exterior dimension. That does not include the walls. We still have to give, now we want to know the interior dimension. We have to subtract the length of the walls. Let's figure this out now. The haluchos, arkan shisha, v'rachav shisha, v'avin shleisha. The tablets that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down, they were 6 by 6 by 3. Munachos keneged arka shel Aron. They were put side by side to fill up the length of the Aron. So you have 2 tablets, each of them is 6 by 6. How much space now do we have? We've taken up 12 of the 15, right? We still haven't counted the walls. How much do they take of the Aron? 12. We have 3 tefachim left. Subtract 1, half for each wall. Half a tefach was the width of each wall. We have 2 tefachim left. The Sefer Torah was put in a space that was 2 tefachim wide. Okay, Shenamar, as the verse states, Ein ba'aron rak shnei luchos havonim. There was nothing in the Aron but the two tablets. Asher niyasham Moshe. My ein ba'aron rak mirach hamir ve'ein mirach hamir el rabbis. There wasn't but. That's an inclusionary feature, right? There wasn't anything but there was something. Besides, for what's specified, there was something else that was in the Aron. What was that? That was the scroll that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. Okay, Sefer Torah Shemunah Aron Pernasus es aron l'orkai. So now we filled up the space of the length of the aron, right? 1 is for the walls, 2 for the right, 15 minus 1, we have 14 left, minus 2 for the scroll, minus 12 for the tablets. Good. Now, what do we do with the width? So the width we said it was 9, right? Now we could subtract 1 for the walls, right? Subtract 6 for the tablets, because tablets are 6 by 6, right? What are we left with? 9 minus 1 minus 6 is 2. Okay. There were 3 tefachim left. Same hand tefach. There's 9 minus 1. There's 2 tefachim left. So that was how the scroll was taken in and out of the aron. You were able to grab it by the sides and lift it out. So you put your hands on each side of the tablets. You went to the end and you grabbed the scroll and you picked it up. Good. Divrei Meir, it's opinion of Meir. Let's go to the next version. Rabbi Yehudah says, the actual Amma was 5 tefachim. Okay, let's turn this into numbers now. If it was 5, so if there were 2.5 times 5 is 12.5. 1.5 times 5 is 7.5. Okay. So you have the luchas with the same dimension, 6 by 6 by 3. They were placed side by side along the length of the ark. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so we have 12 tefachim. We have a half a tefach remainder, right? According to Rabbi Yehudah, each of the walls was a quarter of a tefach. Etzba is a finger, which is a quarter of a tefach for each the width of each wall. We filled the aron to its length. Let's go fill it to its width. It's 7.5 wide, right? We have the luchos eating up 6 of it. So we have the walls eating up half a tefach. So we have 1 tefach left. There's 1 tefach empty widthwise. There were 2 pillars of silver that were kept in the aron. Each one was on the luchos. There was a tefach on the tefach. It was split a half a tefach to each side. In it was a silver bar. Shneimar, as the verse states, "Apirion aslei mel shleimim me'atzi avon amudav aslei ketzef v'ridasi zohav merkavim argaman." Okay, there were these pillars of silver that were lengthwise the full 12 tefachim, and widthwise they were half a tefach each. Okay, the argas shigur by plisht and duril the case roll. Okay, we're a little tight on time, so let's, without getting into too much detail, at some point the ark was captured. There was a plague where rats were destroying people in the city. Rats carried the plague, and this is because they captured the ark. When they returned it, the rats stopped. So as a gift to God, when they returned the ark, they gave them a box of 6 golden rats. And those 6 golden rats were put adjacent to the aron in the Holy of Holies. A box of 6 golden rats. And okay, so now you remember that the ark was built in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. The gift of the rats happened at the time of was it Shalom Melech, I believe. It was King David. It was Shalom, end of Shalom Melech's life, beginning of King David's life, reign. So you're talking about hundreds of years later. Okay, so at that point, they had the box inside the Holy of Holies. All of Sefer Torah Munach, and the Sefer Torah was placed on top of it. Shenemar, the Lokayach Sefer Torah Hazeb, Santa Maisim Mitzad Aron Bris Hashem. The scroll was put beside the Ark of the Covenant. Mitzad Munach, V'loy B'toicha. The scroll was not in the Ark; it was on the side of it. Umayim Mekayim Ein Ba'aron Rak. The rabbis Shivrei Luchos Shemanachim Ba'aron, that the broken tablets were also placed in the Ark. Okay. This is all a very long way of getting to the question. Here's the question. The Isak died of Sefer Torah Kefay Vav Tvachim Michni. Kol sheyesh b'Kefay Shlosh Tvachim Yesh b'Roichev Tefach. Keeping on it's Isa Negal Nafesh Numi Trei Tifcha. Ravcha the Beni Beini B'Trei Pushchi Heicha Yosef. Okay, so here's the problem. You have the scroll. It's got to be at least 2. It's a little bit wider than 2 Tvachim. right? Because it's a little more than 1 to 3. Pi is 3.14, right? So, and not only that, you also have the scroll being rolled to the middle. Now, you don't roll the scroll at 0 because that you're ready to ruin it. You leave a little bit of hollow space. So, how in the world do you fit the scroll if with 2 tefachim of width? Okay. Sefer Ezra l'tchilos lehuniglo. So, okay, so the Gemara says that it was rolled against 1 pole, not 2 poles. So Gemara says it doesn't really solve the problem because the pole still takes up some thickness. It's still a little bit more than 2. How do you fit it in? So they rolled. It wasn't completely rolled against itself. It was rolled mostly against 1 pole and a little bit against the second pole. So therefore, it was able to fit in. Okay. Let's see how far we can get to. A few more side points. Once we're discussing the scrolls, here's an obvious question. Rabbi Yehudah, Mikama Delasi Arges Sefer Torah Hechi Hava Yosef. Before the box of rats came, of golden rats, well, what was the Sefer Torah put on it? You didn't put it on the floor. It's not respectful. So it was hundreds of years before the box of rats came. So what was it the Sefer Torah put on? Hechi Hava Yosef. The Yosef Ilui. They attached a board to stick out of the Ark of the Covenant, and on that board, the Sefer Torah was placed. The Yosef Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says, it says the scroll was placed mitzad Aaron on the side of it. According to Rabbi Yehudah, this makes a lot of sense. The scroll was literally on the side of the Aaron. It was beside it. It was next to it, adjacent. According to Rabbi Yehudah, it was inside of it. So how do you understand the word mitzad? According to Rameir, it was not placed between the tablets, like you could have moved the tablets to each side and put the scroll in the middle. No. It's got to be mitzad, beside it. 2 tablets line up, scroll goes at the end.
Externally.
No, internally.
Internally.
But yes, you have the 2 tablets and then the scroll at the end. Exactly. As opposed according to the version of Rabbi Yehudah, you had the bars which the tablets lie between the bars.
Okay.
The scroll doesn't lie between the tablets, it lies beside the tablets. Okay. Where were the pillars? There was no room to fit them inside. They were outside. Okay. How does Rameir know that the broken tablets were also placed in the ark? Yoshev Akruvim Olav, Melamed Luchas V'Shiver Luchas Menachem Ba'aron. 1 second. Okay, the fact that it says Shem Hashem, the name of God twice, meaning both the name of God here refers to the tablets, and both sets of tablets were placed in the ark. Okay. Okay, looks like we have to we'll stop here. Okay, we'll continue the discussion of the tablets tomorrow. Okay, have a great day.
I just sent something to our webcast group. Morris Engelson did a scholarly article on Talmud's value of pi.